Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and of course, you are the co host on this channel as we talk all things tabletop role playing games. And this WTF, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we're talking a little bit about the industry. Well, actually, mostly about the industry. And I thought this was a question that came up as I've been promoting the N World Kickstarter Level Up Advanced 5th Edition. And it coincides with our discussion yesterday where we were talking about the we're talking about making sausage like piezo plus what was it piezo plus critical role equals making sausage. It's like how we are given a background look into the industry and how close we are nowadays to basically how role-playing games are made. This is probably I'm sure there's other industries that are similar, but in this hobby, we are almost like one, maybe two steps away from the very creators who create the very products that we love. Maybe even just one step away. Many of us follow and interact with many of the individuals who still or used to work for the big companies out there. Of course, TSR, and then it became was purchased uh, by Hasbro, and it became Wizards of the Coast, or maybe vice versa, what have you. And so here's my question, and here's a very question. Um, Paizo's Dead Man says Paizo's frequently asked question says it's pronounced Pido. I didn't I know it's a reference to something like Celtic or what have you. But okay, so here's the question, and give it some thought. All right, we're talking about corporate homebrew, and what I mean by corporate homebrew is at what point is it ancient Greek? Yeah, at what point does the separation between is a single individual living out in the burbs who creates something, a rule set, a game, a modification to a rule or something by themselves versus the individual who has millions of subscribers, has produced 28 RPG books that have kind of been embraced as the standard. How many individuals need to play test something for something to not be homebrew anymore? What kind of content creator does it take? Does it matter where they've worked before they've created the content, and so on and so forth? And this, I think, this is a sliding scale. It becomes a spectrum of such. But it did make me think because as I was promoting the N World, uh, full disclosure, I was brought on as a consultant and writer, as many other people. My part was very small, but as I was brought on, someone had the question like, "Well, why should I back this? It's just a bunch. If it's just a bunch of homebrew." And I was like, "Well, wait a minute. Isn't everything homebrew to the point that it made me think like, isn't everything coming out of WotC homebrew?" Okay, so let me get to our co-host here. Okay, so by the way, Rickard, very always welcome to have you back. Says homebrew is no longer homebrew when you make money off of it, and it becomes corporate when it when it's your full-time gig. See, and here's the thing, okay? Let and I'm going to use real life examples, but I'm not picking on these individuals, and I have no dog in this fight, okay? Because technically, I'm one of these individuals, right? In a very small part, but I am. Okay, so Dave over at Nerdarchy is a full time content creator and has a Patreon where you can sign up for their newsletter, where you can get things. Helped bring out the out of the box adventure. They do homebrew, but and does it full time. So and technically, any it is so easy now to monetize the thing that you create. You can put things up on DM's Guild whenever you feel like it. And if it starts to make money or, a buck a piece or something or pay what you want, does if your, I don't know, character subclass makes it big and you start creating more content, is it still homebrew any longer? You know, Rickard says, quote, or if you require corporate to be bigger when you have an employee you didn't know before starting the company. I love that one. You can put that on a t-shirt like I've gone corporate. There are people who work for me I never knew before, right? Or I pay salaries, so I'm corporate, right? And with the I'm going to call it Paizo. I know it's Pido, whatever. It's Paizo, and I pick with them because everybody calls it that. But anyway, the unionizing of the full time, the desire to unionize by the full time members of Paizo because of their work conditions. Paizo started out as essentially homebrew. They were like, "Oh, wait a minute." You guys changed Dungeons and Dragons. We want the original. Hey, let's do our own thing. And they were writers for, was it Dungeon? It sounds funny, but they were writers for Dragon and Dungeon magazine that went off and did their own thing. And I thought of a number of companies like Cobalt Press, Green Ronin, Dungeon World was created, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, our co-host Rickard says, oh, wait a minute. Here we go. Thanks, Mike. Says out of the box started as homebrew. Most of the encounters were played at my very table. Exactly. And what's the game world the game world that can stop a bullet? I want to say it's called Tolus. TS mm, Tolus or something. Anyway, that started out as homebrew. Eberron started out as home Eberron. I and mind you, I'm pulling up all this. I Keith Baker, was it Keith Baker that created Eberron? Sorry, I'm coming up with names and properties and things. I apologize for incorrectly attributing some of these things, but all this was homebrew. So in many ways, WotC itself is it? Yeah, okay, thank you, thank you there, Mike. Keith Baker created Eberron, and out of a contest, like, hey, we want to have a new game setting, and this person type. Well, I have a game setting. We were playing with our friends. Zip, Eberron. It's huge. Eberron is on the same level as Dark Sun and the rest of these. And yeah, Keith Baker is the writer of Eberron. And one of the issues that I have in our tabletop role playing community is that there are many people who are standing on hills with flags going like, no, this is one thing or this is not another thing. And WotC itself is using surveys. The Unearthed Arcana, in my old days, the Unearthed Arcana was a book. And the Unearthed Arcana came about because of certain rules and things. The new Unearthed Arcana is open to speculation. It's like, hey, we have this idea. They throw it out there. What does the public think about it? Should we change it? Is it too powerful? Less powerful? What's the mechanics? Is it confusing? Do you want this new item introduced? Is it d- does this new introduction fill a gap that we had before? Or maybe it's just really a bunch of people sitting in the office going like, type. Wouldn't it be funny if we had furries or Rubik's cubes or something silly in the game, and they throw it out there on the into the blogosphere, and people respond to it. Is that homebrew? Yes, but no. When the person asked, it isn't for the Kickstarter that I've been promoting, like, isn't this just a giant book of homebrew? And I was thinking, well, it was created from thousands of respondents and surveys because N-World is huge, right? This wasn't just three people sitting in a basement like, wouldn't this be cool? And it makes the fine line between, hey, I'm just sitting at home. Do you think this is nice? Versus 1,500 people going, "Hey, I think this idea is great." I think there's a blend. I think there's this it's like a ship on on the open seas. I think it just moves up and down. And I think for all of us, maybe some of us who are maybe you're a fan of Monty Cook or Cobalt Press or something, and you go, well, I think everything else is homebrew, but I love what they create. It's industry standard to me if this company puts out a product or something. Michael says, of course, says homebrew ceases to be homebrew when it's published. Oh, I missed something. Anyway, ceases to be homebrew when it's published, and when that publishing isn't free. In essence, when you write it for money. And again, maybe here we go talking about the blend. One person may have a great idea, the homebrew idea, but they bring on 3 to 5 other individuals to help them flesh out something. And in essence, they're hiring them to be contributing writers to something. Maybe the fact that they're hiring them could be an issue as well. Rickard says, I would argue that Out of the Box might have started as homebrew, but isn't homebrew anymore. Hmm. Hmm. I yes. The idea of getting together like I don't know, 15 people each to write one adventure to make one giant book. What they've come up with was something out of the, creatively out of their heads, but then when combined into one book and you pay for it, is the exchange of money is it, is that it? Oh, hey Wayne, what's going on? It says I think homebrew is any modification to existing rules of a published product. Even if you later sell your mod, it still diverges from official game rule and still qualifies as homebrew. Now, I'm challenging you on this because I really don't know. But what's a what do you consider to be like an official published product? Because if you mod something and put it out there to sell, is it the embrace of the new mod that's like, hey, I mean, Pathfinder is a mod of a rule system that is official now, and I love the transition. It doesn't the transition doesn't bother me anymore. And uh Sly Flourish's channel, he talks a lot about WotC is just a to him, WotC's just another third party creator. Like there is no official. He's like fifth edition exists, but even it was created through playtest and survey, and that WotC itself is no greater or no lesser than any other third party creator in his mind headcanon. And I was like, that's a kind of a good way of thinking about it. Mike Gould says, when I wrote new player content like races, equipment, spells, magic items, etc., I went over it again and again before introducing it to the table. The modern UA feels like that internal process. Um, it feels like the internal process never happened. Although I would say it might be like wet toilet paper thrown against the wall, maybe. Maybe that's a bad bad analogy, but or even metaphor or something. But like maybe the UA is like, you know what? This idea isn't fully developed at all. Let's put it out there and maybe even for the reason to get people to go, wait a minute, armful, bottom lip pout, like, wait a minute, this makes no sense. Type. Shouldn't this be moved to this? Shouldn't this be a bonus action instead of a reaction? Shouldn't this number be lowered or whatever? And maybe they do that to go, yeah, I was thinking that, but let's get some visceral reaction from a thing, Not sure. Rickard says, when I got a big ass box to pick up from my local post office, or whatever I'm picking up has in it 99.9% left homebrew land. Yeah, that's true. That's true. You pick up a bunch of stuff, you're like, "Hey, listen, this costs a hell of a lot of money to ship to me. Uh maybe it's maybe it's our own way of rationalizing the expense of having books shipped to our homes. Like I paid for this to be printed on dead tree material. Hell no, it ain't homebrew. Wayne says, also good morning everyone. Time to grab my freshly brewed coffee. Ooh, there you go. That's yeah. There you go. There's some brew. Yep. All right. Rickard says it, and out of the box turned into a fully fledged Kickstarter when I got the "you can pick up your order from your local post office" message. I had no idea what I had ordered. Well, maybe that's a fault of all of us having so many like Kickstarters and other things going that you don't even realize what you're getting next. It's just like, wait a minute, it's been 3 days and I got another message to pick up something. That's strange. Yeah. All right. Michael says, let's just say that if I wrote for WotC, it would be thought it would be thought through and table tested before introducing it. Now, here's I'm going to challenge you here, Mike, on the fact that um, much like incest, it's possible they are playtesting it, but they could be so insular that they keep seeing the same things. It's like a person who cooks for their same family and friends, that the group tastes remain the same, and it's difficult to punch out of that, right? Like, I don't know. If the family eats Italian food, you're not going to get a lot of variety of, I don't know, Asian flavors. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, hummus, what's that? And everyone else is like hummus, like, you pita bread, and you could put roasted garlic in, and they're just like, huh, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's possible WotC might not farm out a lot of their playtesting materials until it's much further along, which might be a problem, but maybe they don't see that as a problem. You know what I mean? It could anyway. Again, is WotC technically its own? Is WotC making itself its own third party creator when so many other people see issues in a thing, and we're just like, why are you guys have a blind spot for, like, maybe action economy or creature stat blocks, or how many complaints have been about the ranger, from the original, and they're just like, change it. Why haven't you changed it yet? You Wayne says, officially, I'm calling the original producer, publisher, and writer of a game rule system. Okay. Anything outside of that, that modifies. Okay, anything outside of that, that modifies it as homebrew. Homebrew is slang for not official. All right. Okay. So, no matter what you think of the creator itself created the official version of that thing, is what you're saying. And anybody else that modifies it away from that, whether we like that system or not, is homebrewing. But it does bring to mind, WotC created the original Ranger, and everybody else has homebrewed the Ranger outside of that. And a lot of people are waiting for WotC to hard print a better version of the original Ranger, or even a non-magical Ranger. And everyone's just like, "We hurry up and do it." No one's doing it at all. Wayne says, Mike says, typically eating breakfast when interacting with the stream. Oh, don't interact with the stream in that manner. Okay, Rickard, let's see if I can. Hey, kitty, come on. Says, yeah, that is Kickstarter for sure. Pay some, yeah, pay something. Okay, fill in backer kit. Yeah, the backer kit. Yeah, forget about having backed it. Yeah. And it arrived as a great surprise. Christmas in the middle of summer. You know what? And that's now with shipping problems. That hey, back something, pay for it. Okay. Backer kit. Okay, here's where it's going to arrive. And then that distance, that time distance, it'll be like, I can't. Did I back this 8 months ago? Like, what? Yeah, that's well, even that is a little bit of making the sausage that we didn't know about before, such as uh, backing backing something, and the people who are creating it having issues about offset printing and weight and cost for delivery and all these other things. I mean, simply, what is it? We've known people to have stretch goals that initially they were like, "Yay, we've passed 8 stretch goals to write this, 48 extra pages." And then you realize you got to lay out those 40 extra pages and get people to write it, and then you got to edit it, and then you got to lay it out, and then throw in some more artwork, and then that delays the product, and they're telling their backers like, "Sorry, it's going to be 6 months later than you thought it was," and the backers are like, "Wait a minute." You know, Mike says, DBJ, my table are widely varied in tastes, and they challenge me on the regular. I promise you, they'll challenge me on concepts and mechanics. Yeah, sometimes you need people like that. Sometimes you need people to challenge you, and to be realistic about things as well. When it comes to like play testing and things like that. Uh, the polearm master is like a feat that's kind of broken. It's like the easy go to get a power build, and it's like when you break that, some people get pissed off about that. Rickard says, money aside, homebrew to me simply means non-official or non-canon. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. Let's see. Rickard says, I legit thought Out of the Box was a board game due to some printing on the EU delivery package and tried to figure out what board game I had backed for the entire trip home. Oh, man. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Oh, Mike talks about offset printing. Yeah. If shit, I missed did I think I missed. Anyway, it says issues with offset printing because of 35 years in the industry. Yeah, you know what? There's a having I've never personally had to contend with offset printing myself, but I know about the problems. It's not problems. It's the fact that we as consumers never see that part, right? Like for example, I remember Walden Books and long before Barnes and Noble, it was Walden Books and B. Dalton's. But even with there are still a number of excuse me, Barnes and Noble bookstores and other bookstores and such. But when you go to a bookstore, none of us sees the issues that come with them printing books. You just arrive and they go, "Hey, New York Times best-selling book," and it's on the shelf and you go buy it. But that book could have been delayed for years because of issues with printing and the quality of the printer and having the trash from the last printing company that couldn't handle it to getting a new one because you needed 5,000 copies and they get 2,000 copies into it and it's wrong, and they're pissed off because they just wasted 2,000 printing and they want to get paid for printing a bad product, and you're like, "I'm not paying you at all." And then you're getting lawyers involved in it and all. I mean, there's a lot of problems with that. And if you okay something that's terrible and you go back and change it, that might cost you a lot of money. You know, um, Rickard says, to tangent off the Ranger, I just wish they would fix monks. Yeah, people have problems with that too. Hey, I see you guys in the chat talking about where you're from and where you are located. All right, so another thing that has started to come up now are a- and I have zero problem with this, is that more so now in the tabletop industry than ever before, the writers and creators are becoming their own. I'm gonna call them celebrities. I'll use that term. That some of the writers are becoming their own celebrities unto themselves. Keith Baker, Monty Cook, Matt Colville, and whatnot. And in some ways, their contribution to the RPG industry has kind of made them industry standards, made them official. Um, Matt Colville has talked about creating his own RPG. Now, he's also said that he only will ever play Dungeons and Dragons, which kind of sounds to me like he's going to create his own MCDM uh, version of fifth edition, possibly. I don't know. Monty Cook went out and made the Cipher system. It's D20 ish aside, D20 light, I suppose. But yeah, there are a number of individuals that are their own. They have they've created their own gravity so that what they create, like Monty Cook Games, which isn't Dungeons and Dragons, but a different role playing system and concept, it's like, well, people trust that individual, so then so in effect that individual now has the cachet. They have a force of personality that says the thing that they say and the thing that they do becomes a standard, and people start to move towards that standard. My example before we went live was Critical Role and Matt Mercer and the Critical Role family, and they put out a setting book, and people are like, hell yeah. And it's like, well, what makes, no offense to them, but what makes their homebrew setting book any better than anybody else's, except for the fact that it got printed, right? And there's fans of it. It just makes me wonder, and it makes me, I'm putting it out there for other people to go, do, if if I find something homebrew on like the DM's Guild that 13 people purchased, does that make it any less or more relatable to others? Anyway, I hear you guys talk about warlocks and yeah, or mess, hexblade. Yeah, okay. Co-host here. Rickard says, I prefer fantasy in my fantasy, and monks to me should be something out of a wuxia movie, and you're just a bad brawler. Yeah. Well, semantics has a lot to do with that too, right? Like the word monk and word paladin already come with baggage that doesn't necessarily need to be attached to it. I mean, I'm not saying the class would be any better, but probably the word monk already has bald saffron robed individuals attached to a thing that probably could have just been a pugilist or a, I don't know, brawler, or what Level Up is calling an adept. A lot of sometimes a lot of like homebrews, not homebrew stuff, but official stuff versus homebrew stuff is just a matter of contextualizing it, where it might not be the rule, it might just be the approach to the thing. Matt Koval plays a lot of systems. If he said he'll only play D&D, he lied. Just watch his channel for proof. Oh, he's played a lot of systems. I guarantee, because one time he went through a whole, like, was it Dune? He was talking about. I'm not saying he doesn't play a lot of systems. I'm talking about him promoting a system, which two different things, right? I could have sworn I heard him say he would only be promoting, like actually on camera playing Dungeons and Dragons. But you know what? People change their mind too. So maybe this is like 5 years ago or something, which is like 200 years in the RPG community or so, content. So maybe it was like 4 or 5 years ago. I was listening to him, and he was just like, "There's nothing wrong with Dungeons and Dragons. I love Dungeons and Dragons. I'll be playing it forever." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Deadman says TSR had issues with cutting for their books. Okay, enough that they released an errorful, intentionally including those errors versions of many books. Really, really. Ooh. Sometimes you can get too many cooks in the kitchen, and they want to keep adding things to books. That's a problem as well. When what is it, like Van Richten's Guide kind of falls into that category. Like, we've got all this extra material. What do we do with it? Well, put it together and put it in another book. you know. Rickard's like, no, no, no. I want my Wuxia monks. I don't want a pugilist. No, no. Two separate things. I agree with you that they probably belong in two separate genres. Paladins fighting alongside monks, unless you're specifically embracing a bunch of different things. So I'm with you, because like I love Feng Shui, and Feng Shui is a game built around wuxia style action. The high level, martial arts, wire, all that kind of stuff, but it's not fantasy, classic Dungeons and Dragons fantasy. It doesn't. It actually has very little space for like traditional Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones or something into Feng Shui. Mike Gould says he wrote the Dune RPG. He wrote the new Star Trek RPG. That's right. Just for examples, that's what I'm picking up on. A number of the people who are celebrities unto themselves, who are content creators now, were contributors or helped develop other things before. Um, and much like He Who Shall Be Named, like for Dungeon World, has gotten a lot of awards for creating Dungeon World, and they were creators on other projects as well before going off on their own. And a number of them, like Cobalt Press and Green Ronin, and for some reason my brain is just it's just farting on a number of the other uh, bigger companies that are doing things as well. It's like they, in many ways, have begun to surpass WotC, which is the air quotes official content in terms of like Tome of Beasts. Hey, here's 400 more monsters or something. And people are like, I can't wait for this other company to create the thing that I want based on the official product that I already own because I only use the extra officials, non official stuff that's better or something. Um, Mm-mm-mm. Mike says, print quality for TSR was an issue, as was the bindery. Yeah, ooh, yeah. There's nothing like getting a hardback book and going or soft soft bound book and opening it up and having the glue split. Yeah, WotC have inherited that issue. Books are crooked, have roller marks like long streaks. The pages fall out, etc. Don't get me started on the art. Yeah, and there's a lot of if I have zero skill with printing, but a number of people who produce books, like say through Drive Through RPG, there's some people who complain about some of the. I don't have a problem with the issues, the blurred lines a little bit or something. None of that bothers me very much. But if you're a stickler for creating a quality product, you got to work with the company to create those things, and some of that stuff happens if you're not familiar with it happening, you don't know to look for it, I guess is the way I'm trying to say it. And it's pretty people who spend, you're spending 60 plus bucks on a book and you're going, hey, I want to put this thing up on my shelf. And when you pull it down, the pages fall out and the binding's starting to crack and it you get the you have to worry about I don't know what it's called, but there's like a valley in every book when you start doing layout and stuff. It gets pretty intense. It gets pretty intense when you don't you think about it. Like two-page spread artwork that gets lost because someone didn't take into account that when you open up the book, you won't be able to see the middle binding of the artwork and stuff. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things. I'm aware of them, but I'm a plebe. I'm a noob when it comes to that kind of thing. Rickard says, most settings I play in aren't just ye old Europe, okay, but a full world where all places are represented. So paladins might come from ye old Europe, but Wuxia monks come from ye old sea, yeah, Southeast Asia. Yeah, and although there is a funny real world concept of the fact that what is it like samurai, cowboys, pirates, it's something else all existed at the same time around the world, but didn't interact quite with each other. Something like a European explorers, pirates in the Caribbean, cowboys in the newly colonized Americas, samurai, and of course many other cultures around the world who weren't interacting all existed around the same time. And there's been some people who've tried to make a setting where they did come into contact with each other, but it's kind of cool, especially if you're establishing like, yeah, my this samurai did come from Japan. They didn't just fall out of the sky, getting wedged into this you know pseudo Euro setting or something. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm. Mike says, "Say what you want about 4E, but its artwork was badass." I agree. I gotta agree with you on that. Dark Sun, the original, hired Boris, and the quality shows. Same with Planescape. There was a thing about having one or a few artists do all the artwork for a particular setting that really, like a Spelljammer was that way in some ways. But I think Planescape and Dark Sun were two where they used the same artist throughout the entire run that really embraced that. Like the Boris artwork and Dark Sun are like meshed together. Like you can't get rid of one or the other, which is right now surprises me that WotC is not recycling the art from Magic the Gathering for literal Magic the Gathering settings in fifth edition. I don't. They've got they own the art. Why wouldn't they use it? Or they could cut the artist, a minimal check because the art's already been created. I don't know why they wouldn't do that. Wayne talks about the idea. I've heard Drive Through RPG has such issues. They do because you can't. I won't fault them so as much as maybe like Mike does, because his Mike works in the in the printing field. But drive through is literally printing things on demand. So in effect, if they're only printing 17 books of this and 3 books of that and 25 books of another thing and all different qualities and such, I can see there being issues because they don't have the time to do a small print run, see what it looks like, send it to you. You as the creator, you look at it, you send it back with these notes. They do it again. Like they don't have time for that. They don't. They're just like, look, we're trying to get the book off out of our machine and get it to you. Fold, fold, fold. Boom, done. And when you get it, maybe it's been the ink spreads, or when you go to open the book. I haven't had any of those issues, but I know people who live overseas and have them shipped, and it takes a long time. When a book is compressed together and it's the ink is wet, you can get those shadows on the pages and things of that nature. Mm-mm. Mike says, DBJ, it bothers me because a DMG in Canada costs around $85. Wow. If I blow that kind of cash on a tome, I demand quality. Exactly. I mean, because we do have monetary exchanges that makes the value of something spike, or drop below or spike. So if it's a lot of these things come from the US, and when it gets shipped out of the states, the price just skyrockets. So whereas it does something doesn't bother me, you're paying an extra premium on something. You're just like, hell no, I don't want my art to have a shadow lines around it because of some printing issue, or when I open the book and put it on a table and open it to the middle, that you don't hear that the proverbial crack from when the glue splits or something, right? Yeah, yeah. I can't argue argue with you on that one. Um, Named by the namer, hey, says, I hate Drive Through RPG's color profile. I'm trying to make multiple covers for a series of books, and it's such a big difference. Yeah, yeah. We Alex, who does the layout for Critical Hit Publishing that I've written for, he likes to he uses a certain type of art program of muted colors because drive through doesn't get vibrant colors in the first place. So he's adapted his layout and art style using art assets to their quality rather than trying to fight it. But it made that's only because it works. Me writing like cinematic environs is all about environmental pictures, and a lot of that stuff is. It does it matter if it's faded? No, because it's like someone standing on a cliffside taking a picture of a mountain, and it's just like, it's not a close up of someone's eye where you need all the detail or something of that nature. And if you're an artist, like you don't want your art smudged. It's like, look, I went out of my way to make that. You better get all the detail. I drew pores in that person's face. Um, so yeah, I get that too. Dead Man mentions, for me, the one second edition hardcover that isn't falling apart now is the Monstrous Manual. They did have a lot of problems with WotC punching out a ton of books that were terrible quality, and I think that's another reason why people are um up spending to get bookshelf quality books, leatherette covers with ribbons, markers and things like that, because of the knowledge that the up quality version is inherently going to be better than the base quality, if that makes sense. So I think and as well as the fact that people like to collect things. So yeah, why not? Ooh, yeah, questing bee. Sorry, I'm catching you guys talking to each other. Mike brings up questing, talks about talking to Rickard about, you might want to check out Questing Beast for a wide array of OSR settings that are wild and weird, Asian, desert, otherworldly, etc. I love Questing Beast. I love his presentation. It's very matter of fact, and he has a certain tone in his voice. He comes across where it's like it's non he does have an opinion, but he's not opinionated. He's more like, "Oh, this fits into the OSR. This isn't quite OSR, but I like this part of it," or whatever. I love I love his panels. Uh, at one point, he was trying to read the original Dungeon Master's Guide. I think he'd stop that because that's daunting. I think it's, what was it, like 6 point font level or lesser if you take a look at the original Dungeon Master's Guide. But yeah, Questing Beast, he does a great reviews and overviews. Rickard says, caveat. Okay, I'm also European, so ye old Europe might just not have as big appeal to me as you lot on the other side of the pond. Yeah, there is a little bit of that. You're just like, yawn, Vikings, yawn, I am one, whatever. Right? No, I really get that. We'll get back into we'll get back into the original topic here, but Mike says the cover art for Planescape was mwah, chef's kiss. So again, to circle back a little bit on what the idea of what we're talking about here is how do we rationalize to ourselves, or how do we vacillate between what is homebrew and what's industry corporate? And I do like what Wayne said. It's like, well, if the creator creates the thing, that's the creator made it official. Everybody else who modifies that is making homebrew. And we are, in many ways, we are in a sweet we're in a sweet spot now in the tabletop role playing game community where we have things coming that are official from the corporations. We have individuals who used to work for them, or yeah, maybe even still do work for them here and there, but they're also celebrities of on their own, and they're creating their own industry amongst themselves below their name that are punching out a lot of products. I go back to Matt Colville's Arcadia magazine is coming out with things. Of course, we have, like I brought up, Monty Cook and Keith Baker, who's still producing material for Eberron, even though he doesn't own it any longer. Over at DM's Guild, he's making money off of the thing that he sold, where technically some people would say he didn't get paid what he should have gotten for the worth of it. But I think it was fair because it didn't exist. I think he said he got paid like $5,000 or something for Eberron, and now it's worth so much more money for them. But now he's able to make money off of the thing that he created, make getting that money to himself. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, all right. Deadman says Tony Dater Daterlezi did all the art for Planescape. Oh my god. Just there's something about having one or maybe a handful of individuals do all the artwork through a whole series that really again Daterlezi doing the artwork for Planescape, Boris doing the artwork for Dark Sun. I wish we could go back to that. Although that would limit other artists contributing, but I wish we could go back to that where you just had you had a theme, you had an artistic theme as well as a layout theme, and stick with that for some of these new settings and such. Mike says, I've seen some third party art out there which blows me away. The talent is mind boggling. And yet we get artwork that looks like it was painted with magic markers, where facial features look like uh, everyone is being goosed. Whoa, where's that thumb at? Woo! Little Benny Hill there, like get zoink. What the hell? Um, listen, just go visit what is it? ArtStation. Yeah, you go visit ArtStation, you'll go down a rabbit hole of some great artists, concept artists. As a matter of fact, some of those concept artists who were hired for like movies and television have become their own industry as when it comes to art and stuff. So, but I do agree with you. I think price has a lot to do with that as well. Are you as an artist, are you as a quality artist, are you willing to reduce your fee to get more of your art out there? Um, like there was the gentleman Dwayne something. God, oh my brain. Did a ton of original artwork for Pathfinder, and that artist has created a standard for Pathfinder that they've moved forward with. Mike says if I wrote product for Drive Through RPG, the art assets would be sepia tone, exact because that's what we do. Sketches like some old medical manual or explorer's diary, just to take advantage of their disadvantage. Yeah, that's what we do too. It's it, we take advantage of the fact that it makes it look faded and old and a little bit um has less detail to it. So we've taken advantage. Well, we Alex has taken advantage of that, and I'm like, yeah, do that as well. D, what's going on, Dante? YouTube never gives me the appropriate notifications. Been awake since 2 and only just now for the ping. Really? Really? I hate when that happens. YouTube is weird like that. It's like, hey, I subscribe, but I'm not going to notify you. Then you got to go through an extra step to get notifications, and that's weird. Wayne says WotC is a terrible company, and the changes they're insisting on in the game are starting to turn gamers off. Yes, but I'll agree with Sly Flourish on this one that maybe they're just another. This is weird to say. Maybe WotC doesn't own Dungeons and Dragons in 5th edition any longer. Maybe they're just another. This is weird to say. Maybe they created the recipe, but nobody bothers watching their cooking show, if that makes sense, right? Like, oh, you you made a cake? Great. Now the rest of us are going to go ahead and make our own cakes, and we don't need to listen to you any longer. You know what I mean? Uh, what? Canoeing? Hmm. You guys are weird. Okay, getting back to the co-host comments here. Mike says the TTRPG community has its own celebrities. Yeah, it does. And when these individuals make their own content, it's viewed less as homebrew and more like third party. It has a baked-in acceptance. Okay, I didn't consider the term third party as a moniker or like a descriptor to talk about. So I will agree with you there. Like Cobalt Press is a third party um creator as opposed to Homebrew, which technically, you could say, well, isn't everything that Cobalt Press makes Homebrew? Well, we would say no. Maybe they are considered more third party because they have a lot of play testing individuals they can call upon. They have individuals that have been working for them that have already worked in the industry for a very long time as well. So yeah, third party creators. I I gotta agree with you on that, Mike. I definitely agree with you. You guys are silly. D's like a campaign, but canoeing is totally something I can see a party doing in Exandria. I know. It's autocorrect. That's what it is. Just a passerby. Okay, all right. A lot of people are just passerby. Says, okay, was wondering why you began about about canoeing. It is campaigning. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Mike says to Wayne, the changes in the game were already in play at my table years ago. I removed alignment. Yep. Changed monsters to have cultures and homebrewed species with the players. I think people are just mad because people just don't like change. The idea of separating race out for like a heritage or separating genetics versus separating nature versus nurture. I see it's weird. Like I see zero problem with that because it doesn't take away your choice to keep it. It just means more choice for other people. I, I suppose that's one issue I don't like about the wider tabletop. Yeah, lineage is a word that's been used. Lineage, heritage. Um, I've heard legacy from different third party creators. Funny that they all create begin with the letter L. Anyway, the I think it's the one thing that I don't like in our tabletop role playing community is the idea that people not only want the choice they want, which is fine, but they're against other people having a thing that they themselves would never interact with. You know, it's the it's the while this has faded quite away into the background, it was the quote unquote fight between the OSR community and recent community. And it's like, why are you fighting? You could play literally any edition of Dungeons and Dragons you want at any time in the history of role playing games. And we don't you don't have to do that at all. Thank you. They're named by the namer. Always glad to have people here. Remember, I'm an idiot. You guys, you co-hosts, make the show even better. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Ooh, don't ooh. Just a passerby says to Dante. Sounds like Hyperion, Endymion canoe trip. If you okay, listen. I know some of you young people out there are like Hyperion, Endymion. Dan Simmons. It's a 4-book series. The first 2 books, Hyperion 1 and 2. If someone in the chat, please come up with the full titles to those books. The Hyperion and Endymion series, which is takes place in one world. Long story short, they have these portals that are like warp doors to go from one planet to another. It's like a wormhole, and it's basically a giant ring. Uh, um, 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 we've seen this before, right? Giant ring, step through the ring, you appear in another place. They created a river, an infinite river that goes from world to world throughout the hegemony. And this river, you can take a boat down the river going from world to world in an infinite river because you can come back to the place you started. And so there is no beginning of the river and end. It's just infinite. And so you might be on Earth, you go down a river, and when you sail through the ring, you might appear on Alpha Centauri, and then you might appear on the methane seas of Titan or something, and then go on and there's different flavors throughout the rivers and stuff. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. All right. Um, Michael says the complaint I heard from Pathfinder players was that 5e somehow didn't have enough customization. So Tasha's introduced customization with lineages, and then it's somehow wrong. Yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, I'm one of the poster childs for despising when people say I hate diversity, and I'm just like, I get what they're saying, but what I hear is them holding up a middle finger to me, going like, "I don't want you in our RPG community." So, and it's like, what? Like it's the what was it? The fight about creating a battle wheelchair was a thing that spiked. Wheelchairs in my fantasy game, stupid. I'm like, why would you hate that? If you're never going to use it, what does it matter to you? you know, there we go. There it is. Just the passerbys is Hyperion, the fall of Hyperion, and then Endymion, the rise of Endymion. Yes, thank you so much. I could walk right back to my book, my little man cave and get those books. Yeah, yeah. A great series too. Com- Complicated. Dan Simmons did a great job in describing a complication. I still don't get the Shrike, but whatever. I love it. Wayne says, TBJ, remember, I'm an idiot. Me? No wonder I feel at home here. Yeah, yeah. See, and that's the thing, right? Like, many of us are going like, what? Like scratching our heads, like, Watsy, what are you doing? And now, mind you, they are owned by a corporation. So workers have bosses, bosses have their bosses, and then those bosses have their own I'm going to say agendas, and I don't mean that in an evil, sinister kind of way, but when we as individuals think about our bills. Hey, do I have another $20 to buy pizza or something? But when you're talking about a multi-million dollar corporation, they have to think about what image and marketing and timing and employee benefits and all. They have to think about things that we never think about. And now, like as we talked about yesterday, with finding out how much Critical Role has earned and how they earned it, and people getting upset about that, it's like, yeah, you start to when you break through certain tax brackets, it's like you become a corporation unto yourself just simply by your name. Most of the top 100 most famous artistic creators, whether they're like musicians or actors and stuff, they're literally LLC corporations because they're earning so much money, and they have to think about that. They have to hire uh, social media consultants that produce social media for them, that they okay, or have somebody like they go to tweet something and they hire a social media consultant that stops their tweet, edits it, and then puts it out to keep them from saying the wrong thing and stuff. I mean, that's a real thing. There's a lot of famous people, they don't make their own material at all. They don't put out their own tweets. They have somebody else do it for them. They just okay it. Michael says the river sounds like Styx, which could be homebrew to go anywhere. Yeah, the river Styx. Yeah, it is like that. Except it's science fiction, but it is exactly the same thing. Why are we talking about canoeing? Oh man, D says whitewater rafting canoeing through Eberron's southern continent sounds like a great next chapter in DBJ's cinematic environments. White That would be awesome to like whitewater raft somewhere. You'd have to have a reason why. You'd have to have a like a tension timer. Like, hey, the PCs have to get from A to B, and how would you navigate the rules for whitewater rafting? Hmm. you I would assign roles to different individuals, and two or more people doing it would have the help action. So you'd have like somebody navigating, people paddling, and somebody watching out for objects and debris and stuff. That sounds awesome. Get to use those drowning rules, and the dwarf wearing the plate mail armor is going to get pissed off and stuff. Yeah. Mike says, perhaps time is the key to the perception of homebrew. All right. We look back fondly now at things like Eberron and see them as established settings, yet they had to start as homebrew. I agree with you there, with time being a thing, right? Like, for example, the old Dungeon and old Dragon magazines were a way for the Dungeons and Dragons creators to give us options, some of them maybe not thought through as well as we would like, and then to say, you know what, this for example, this writer might have been like, hey, it'd be cool to have a chronomancer that uses time, and then they put it out there, and everyone's just like, it's too broken, or players are like, I love it because it's broken, and the person that created it is like, dope. Oh, you know time stop at first level, dope. you know and then they go, well, this isn't official, and then many years later we look back at it and go, okay, all right, I see where they were going with that. Heck, for those who don't know, kobolds were not uh, adjacent. They used to be dog-like until they changed it. So does that make me and my old grognardisness wrong for the industry if I say, hey, they shouldn't change a thing? And of course, all of us are growing up in our own age, and so the age we grow in, much like comic books, movies, television, it's difficult for us to look prior to our age or into the future of our own age, because we think that's where everything belongs. And it's the to me, it's the Miles Morales of the Spider-Man universe, right? Where I didn't grow up with a Miles Morales, so Miles Morales seems like a second class Spider-Man. I love Miles Morales, by the way. I'm joking, but to me, there is no other Spider-Man than Peter Parker in the original suit. Everything else, Iron Spider and all that, to me is like bullshit. It's like, what? That's not Spider-Man. Yet, if you're a kid and the first thing you pick up is one of these, and I think role-playing games are the same way. Many people today are picking up fifth edition, and they we might we are of the opinion that we look at third parties and we don't see as much of a gap between WotC and third party creators. Whereas new people coming into it say, none of that matters to me. I need it printed and developed by WotC, or it is unacceptable at my table at all. And I think many of us have problems with that a little bit. All right, let's get back to our co-host before we get out of here. Mike says, getting back to questing beast, there are OSR settings where entire settings are navigated by streams and rivers, or even inside massive creatures via the bloodstream. Navigating massive creatures like going through the bloodstream sounds tight. Yeah. Dante says, we could do field research a few hours south of here. I haven't visited the New River in a while. There's a train wreck and bridge ruin I'd like to see again down there. Really? Hmm. Finding ancient things in rivers is tight. Sorry, I'm doing a little screen rant thing. Sorry, pitch meeting thing. Sorry. Rickard says, all things start either like homebrew or like R&D. Okay, and arguments can be made if something began as one or the other. I agree with that. The origins of a thing, probably we could argue about the origins of a thing, but I don't think that has anything to do with where it is today, right? Like today, advantage disadvantage is integral, an intrinsic part of fifth edition, and was created by playtesting, right? And so you could complain about the math of advantage disadvantage and where it came from and whether you like it or not, but it does exist and it is intrinsic to it, you know. Hey Vince, Mike says Dungeon Magazine, though written by TSR and WotC, were viewed as third party despite being released by the same company that made the game. That's very true. That's very true. I was a Dragon Magazine individual. I wasn't very much a Dungeon Magazine person, and I don't know why I made a difference in my head canon about that. Pretty youthful idiocy, I think, but yeah, I was very much a Dragon Magazine, and again, that was just because I think I had access to it earlier, so I just thought it was more official than Dungeon, but whatever. Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun series might make a nice RPG setting. Gene Wolfe, Book of the New Sun. I have to check that out. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Somebody's a Grogdard. My kobolds are still dog-like. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, those who don't know, kobolds started out as dog-like. Named by the namer, WotC says WotC might be being affected by the ESG score for stockholders. That's very true. They need to put out more environmental, social, and governance issues to get a better score. And the thing is that we can complain that WotC is capitulating to these issues, but if you owned a major corporation, you yourself might have to go, ooh, I have to, wow, I really, you open a restaurant, you have food services, and when they have inspectors come in, just because your greatest dish works a certain way doesn't mean you're allowed to create it if your place is dirty, And WotC, being a member of Hasbro is like, we don't want problems with this thing. Hey, you have to perform certain things to get a score to allow the business to continue or operate in a certain manner or get certain investors like advertisers and things of that nature. And advertising money is important. Why do you think some of us live streamers are like, and let's take a break to do our sponsorship? Um Here we go. Almond milk, sponsor me, you sons of bitches, right? I mean, how many people do that in their streams and stuff? And corporations are just a bigger version of that. Of go to Skillshare or Nebula or something, sign up for this thing and whatnot. That It's a thing. Wayne says, I love the old pig-faced kobolds, snarly fang-toothed little suckers. Yep, they sure used to be. Named by the Namer says that's why we're seeing a change that meets the current cultural pressures made by the ESG rating providers. Yeah, well, here's another thing too, right? Like those of you who are, no one misses a thing until it's gone, and no one notices a thing until it's there. And I would challenge many of you to go back and look at a ton of old RPG products and point out a person of African or African American descent visually represented in those books. And I would guarantee if I went back to my bookcase, 85 to 90% of those books has zero representation in it. So the minute I see something, I'm like, oh, that's different and special. Maybe I might want to give my money to that thing. So when people today are like, oh, I hate diversity because it's being forced down my throat, I'm going, sure. But when it wasn't there, the non-diversial issue was being forced down my throat. And yet they were taking my money, right? The money's still green, or the money's the color that you pay for it, whatever. But you get the point. Just a passerby says DBJ. To me, Watsi seems to look down on grognards in the OSR crowds. See Thacka the clown as evidence. I don't think they look down on that. I think it's just people. Everybody likes their tribe, and everybody likes to raise up the spear in their tribe and shout at the other group across the way. Vince says homebrew has a very bad rep. A lot of groups would never play anything not official, which for me is very sad because I'm in love with homebrewing. Yeah. Oh man. Ricker says I'm very much okay. WotC or it will require my expressed approval. After rigorous testing done by me way before it gets close to the table. That's an issue too about people homebrewing something without ever testing it versus say a third using the what Mike was talking about, a third party creator who's like, not only do all of us in the company together have experience balancing these things, we also have playtesters who can do yet further passes on a thing, to say whether it should fit or something. Okay, Passerby says urban legend. D&D became so popular because everybody had to homebrew because rules were so unclear. That's very true. The whole OSR community came about through that. Lamentations of the Flame Princess and Swords of Sorcery and so on and so forth. All that OSR stuff, that's all homebrew. All of it's homebrew. Old rules that were unclear that people went back and reprinted. So why not? Vince says, and not all homebrew is created equal. Some really is stupid and unbalanced, but some are equal and rarely even better than the original. I think it becomes better than the original when we in our head canon stop looking at it as homebrew. It starts moving into third party. I bring up Kobold Press again. They're getting free press on this channel. But anyway, guys, D says I'm currently fed up with WotC since they put Forgotten Realms in Magic. They broke the rule don't cross the streams. Yeah, you know what? What is it? It's been, wow. Has it been 30 years of Magic the Gathering? And so they've got to do something different. And listen, Magic the Gathering itself is a brand. Yeah. Okay, yeah, Magic Gatherings are moneymaker. The crossbreed setting is basically a cash grab from Magic Gathering players to get them into D&D. Exactly. Yeah, but if you want a successful company, yeah, sure is. I'm to be honest with you, I'm flabbergasted. All of the sets of Magic Gathering haven't been converted into PDF and print books for fifth edition. They've got all the art assets. They've already got background. They've got NPCs and monsters. I get that some of the stuff might be reprinted, but that's a cash grab itself. Just ready for it. Yeah. Yeah. Sponsor me, your sons of bitches. Yep. I guarantee you. Okay. Yep. I'm going to be late to work. All right, guys. Oh man, you guys still going on? Anyone have? Thank you there, Wayne. Wayne's taking us out. Have a great day, everyone. Afternoon or evening or night. Yes, because you might be around the world. Sorry, couldn't respond to everything. But thank you very much. Come back here for Well, they have been as like UAs kind of. And Ravnica was created. I'm just saying, I'm surprised they don't have a book that I can put on a bookshelf one after the other. That's what I guess that's what I mean, as opposed to like a 5-page PDF, you know. But anyway, guys, everybody have a great one. Take care. Mighty Turtle Shiny and Homebrew. I knew it would. I knew that. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. Let's talk about representations, talking more about changing settings or cultural alignments. I have a hard time finding representation to my brother. I used to make African settings. Yeah. I had those problems as well. And it's just a sticking point because a lot of people don't know who I am. You know, online, facially, I'm invisible, and I'll hear comments or see things, and I'm just like, you stop. Like you're backing yourself into a corner and you literally don't know who you're talking to or and stuff. It's just anyway. It's a bit depressing. I find people to be sad sometimes, and it's like why are you complaining? You're not even going to use this material. You know, like does it matter? So anyway, I don't know. I get the idea of like somebody going to like an ice cream shop and complaining that there's other flavors in the ice cream shop, right? It's like, oh, butter pecan ice cream needs to get the hell out of here. You're shoving I don't know moose tracks down my throat. You know, it's just weird like that. Magic the Gathering was initially released in '91, and I have cards from that era too. No rares or nothing like that, but yeah, I still have cards from '91. I still have them. That's crazy. That it's such a moneymaker. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Have a great day. I've got to get out of here, but you guys have a great one. Thank you very much for being part of the show. Tomorrow is Future Friday. Not exactly sure what we're going to talk about, but it will be industry industry specific. So yeah. Don't eat that food you enjoy. Maybe I will. I'm gonna put it in my mouth. That's where I'm gonna do it. Put that food right in my mouth. There's a party in my mouth. You're all invited. Everyone have a